in the outskirts of a forgotten town, where even the maps had long since faded its name. The wind whispered secrets through broken fences and cracked windows. The town slept beneath a soft, white hush of snowfall, surrounded by pine trees that stood like sentinels, unmoving, as if listening. At the very end of a frost-bitten road, tucked between a slope and a frozen stream, stood a crooked house with faded shutters and a slanted roof. Inside lived a girl named Mira. She was 8, small, quiet, and filled with the kind of stillness that comes from sorrow. Her eyes held the weight of winters she shouldn't have lived through. 2 winters ago, her world had changed. A blizzard had taken more than warmth. It had taken her parents, leaving only silence in their place. Now, Mira lived with her grandmother, a woman made of soft sweaters and whispered lullabies. Their days were built from small rituals, feeding the birds, boiling tea, reading old storybooks whose pages crackled like kindling. But Mira had changed since the accident. She no longer ran across fields or danced under moonlight. She listened too much, not just to people, but to wind, trees, and the empty air, as if something might answer back. The villagers knew her. They offered nods and awkward smiles, but rarely invited her to play. "Poor girl," they would say, and keep walking. Still, Mira found her joy in quiet things. The way frost painted the windows at dawn, how the snow fell slower near the stream, the way candlelight flickered across her mother's photograph. And then, one morning, everything changed again. She was staring out the window with a piece of toast in her hand when she saw him. A dog. Huge. Still. Sitting at the edge of her yard like a statue carved from shadows and snow. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Because something in his eyes made her heart ache. Like remembering a dream you never knew you had. It was the 3rd morning of deep snow when the dog returned. Mira had barely finished her tea when she noticed the same silhouette by the old birch tree. A shadow unmoving, as if the cold itself had carved a beast from nightfall and left it there. This time, she opened the door. The cold slapped her cheeks, but she stepped out slowly. The snow crunched under her feet like old paper. The dog's ears perked, but he didn't move. She walked to the edge of the porch and sat on the top step. "I don't have much," she whispered, placing a corner of buttered toast on the frozen wood. "But you can have it." She didn't stay to watch. She stood, turned, and walked back inside. From the window she saw him approach. Sniff the bread. Take it gently. Then he sat back down. And stayed. By the end of the week, Mira had given him a name. Ash. It wasn't just for the way his fur carried flakes of gray and silver. It was something else. Something about how he looked at the firelight through the window, as if remembering. Each day, Ash would arrive before dawn and leave only after dusk. He never barked, never howled. But he was there, watching, waiting. Some villagers began to notice. They'd pass Mira's house on the way to market and see the dog by the fence, unmoving. "Is that thing still here?" the butcher murmured. "He's got wolf blood," said another. "Look at those shoulders. Dangerous." Mira heard the whispers, but she didn't care. Every morning she saved a piece of her breakfast, sometimes wrapping it in cloth and tucking it under a stone by the porch. It always disappeared, and sometimes a pine cone or smooth pebble was left in its place. Once, a single glove she had lost weeks ago appeared on the step, damp, but folded neatly. Winter grew harsher. One afternoon, heavy snow trapped the whole town indoors. Mira pressed her face to the glass, searching. Ash was there, covered in white. Still, like a statue sculpted by the storm. Her grandmother pleaded, "Mira, you can't keep feeding that beast. You don't know what he wants." But Mira simply said, "He's guarding us." Then came the fox. One evening, as Mira stepped out to leave food, A flash of orange darted from the trees. A fox, skinny, wild, desperate, lunged toward her. Before she could scream, Ash was there. He didn't growl. He didn't bite. He placed himself between Mira and the fox and lowered his head. One slow, heavy step forward. The fox halted, hissed, and fled. Mira stood frozen. Ash turned, looked at her, then resumed his place by the birch. She ran to him. Kneeling in the snow, she whispered, "You really are watching us, aren't you?" For the first time, he leaned in, and Mira felt something old in his heartbeat. Not just warmth, but memory. The next morning, someone knocked on their door. It was the postman. "Your dog scared off a pack of strays last night. They were tearing up bins by the bakery," he said. "He's not ours," her grandmother replied. The man raised a brow. "Could have fooled me." He stood between the store and the street like a soldier. Mira stepped outside. Ash looked up from his usual spot. Snow clung to his back like a silver cloak. She smiled. "You're not just a guardian," she said softly. "You're remembering something. Someone." Ash didn't move, but his eyes never left hers. And the snow kept falling, softer now, as if the sky itself was listening. It didn't take long for the rumors to begin. They started as murmurs in the market. Soft voices behind stacks of potatoes and onions. "Still there," the butcher muttered, peering past a frost-covered window. "Every single morning." "I saw it too," added the baker. "Just sitting, like it's guarding something. Or someone." A fisherman swore on his nets that the dog had followed him halfway to the woods and back again without making a sound. Didn't growl. Didn't blink. Just followed. Like it was checking on me. No one wanted to say it outright, but something about the dog unsettled them. Not because he was violent, he wasn't, but because he watched. Silently. Intelligently. Too intelligently. Children dared each other to toss pebbles near him. Most ran before they even got close. One boy tried to snap a stick in his direction. The next day, his sled went missing. It turned up outside Mira's house, carefully propped against the porch. Untouched. Clean. Some said the dog could read your thoughts. Others claimed it was a ghost in disguise. Mira heard them all. And she grew more protective. She began bringing out warm broth in the evenings, pouring it into a chipped bowl that once belonged to her father. Ash never touched it while she watched, but the bowl was always empty by morning. One night, Mira's grandmother found her sitting outside long after the lamps were out. "You can't stay out here," she said, pulling the blanket tighter around the girl. "I'm not scared," Mira replied. "It's not about fear, child. That dog, his name is Ash." Her grandmother hesitated, then sat beside her. "I once knew a dog like that," she whispered. "During the war. He belonged to a soldier who never came home. But the dog waited. For years. Wouldn't leave the outpost." Mira looked up. "Did he remember?" The old woman nodded. "Every scent. Every sound. Every footstep. Dogs don't forget the ones they love. Not truly." They sat in silence after that. Above them, snow fell soft and slow. A week later, the mayor sent for the town constable. "He's scaring folks," the mayor said. "That dog. Someone's going to call the district." The constable came one afternoon with a net and 2 men. Mira stood between them in the yard. "You can't take him," she cried. "He hasn't hurt anyone." Ash stood completely still behind her. The constable raised his hand. "We just want to check him for tags. Identification." He approached slowly. Ash didn't move, but his eyes never left the man's face. Closer. Closer. Then suddenly the constable stopped. He knelt. He looked straight into the dog's eyes, then whispered, "I know you." The villagers leaned in. Mira blinked. The man stood up slowly, his voice quieter now. This dog, he was part of a K-9 unit, years ago, in the city. My cousin trained him. They called him Ghost. Mira gasped. The crowd began to murmur. The constable turned. He disappeared during a fire rescue. Everyone thought he died. But he didn't, Mira said softly. He remembered. And he found his way here. Someone asked, "Why here?" The constable looked down at Mira, then at the dog, and the realization began to ripple. It wasn't random. It wasn't luck. Ash hadn't just chosen a house to sit in front of. He had returned to someone. Someone he remembered. Someone he had once sworn to protect. It was the coldest night of the year. The wind howled through the village like an ancient voice, rattling shutters and tugging at the old wooden signs. Inside her home, Mira slept curled beside the fireplace, a book still open beside her. Her grandmother had gone to bed hours before, the last candle blown out, the silence thick and heavy. Ash, as always, sat outside. His posture, normally relaxed and regal, was different that night. Tense, alert. He had sensed it. Long before the man crept up the hill. Long before boots sank into the snow just beyond the fence. The first sound Mira heard was faint, a crunch of something too heavy to be wind. She sat up, her breath misting in the cold air. Another step, and another. She tiptoed to the window. There, at the edge of the trees, a figure moved, cloaked in shadow, shivering with nerves. A man, unknown, not from the village. She couldn't see his face, but she saw his intention, the way he moved like a predator, the way his hand hovered near his belt. Then, before she could shout, a flash of movement. Ash. He tore through the snow like thunder. No bark, no warning, just power and silence and speed. The man turned, startled, tried to run, but Ash was already there. He lunged, not to maim, not to kill, but to knock the intruder back, down, away from the house. There was a shout, a scuffle, the glint of something metal dropping in the snow. Mira screamed for her grandmother. Lights flickered on. Doors opened down the road. By the time help arrived, the man was gone, limping into the woods. But Ash stood at the edge of the property, teeth bared, fur raised. A silent guardian returned to stillness. The townspeople arrived in stunned clusters. Someone picked up the object dropped in the snow, a switchblade. A hush fell. Mira's grandmother held her close as the constable approached Ash. But Ash, now calm, simply walked to the porch and sat. He didn't attack, the constable said. He defended. Someone murmured, "He saved her." The next day, everything changed. The whispers of fear became stories of awe. The man who tried to break in was never found, but his footprints told the tale. Ash was no longer just the strange dog. He was a protector, a savior. And Mira, for the first time in months, felt something new blooming inside her chest. Safety. Not from walls, but from loyalty and love. In the days following the break-in, the village changed. People who once crossed the street to avoid the house now came to offer soup, blankets, even toys. Ash had become a legend overnight. Children made drawings of him. Adults spoke his name with a hush of reverence. But Mira wanted answers. There was something deeper, something unspoken in Ash's eyes when he looked at her, like a memory not quite hers. One morning, the village constable returned. This time, not with a net, but with a folder. He sat at the kitchen table while Mira and her grandmother watched in silence. "I called in a favor," he said. "Had them run a chip scan and send me the report." He slid the folder across the table. "This dog, his real name is Ghost." Mira's breath caught. Ghost, the constable continued, was part of a rescue K-9 unit stationed in the capital, Unit 12, served under a man named Officer Marcus Rowan. Her grandmother gasped. That was My son, she whispered. My father, Mira said, almost at the same time. Silence fell. The constable opened the folder again, revealing an old black-and-white photo. A tall man in uniform, kneeling beside a younger Ash. His fur brighter, but the eyes unmistakably the same. Tears slipped down Mira's cheek. He was declared missing in action during a flood response mission, the constable explained. His partner was presumed dead, too. But Ghost survived. Somehow, he vanished from the city. And all this time, he was finding his way back. Her grandmother covered her mouth. He remembered. All these years, he remembered. Ash lay quietly by the fireplace. At the sound of his name, Ghost, his ears twitched, his head lifted. He stared at the photo as if recognizing it. He walked over, slowly, deliberately, and placed a paw on the image. That evening, the town held a small vigil by the frozen stream. Candles glowed against the snow. People shared stories, not just of the break-in, but of Ash's quiet acts. The fox incident, the cleared paths, the returned glove. The way he watched over Mira like she was the most precious thing in the world. Mira stood before them, holding the photo. This isn't just a dog, she said. He's a memory. He's love that didn't forget. He came home when no one else could. The village bowed their heads, some in prayer, others in shame. Ash, Ghost, sat beside Mira, unmoving, proud. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, the house at the edge of the village was filled with warmth and something more. Belonging. Winter softened. The snow that once coated the rooftops like sorrow now glistened like hope. The sun returned, pale and slow, warming the earth inch by inch. But Ghost stayed. Every morning he took his place by the steps. Every evening he waited for Mira to come and sit beside him. Their quiet routine continued, no longer hidden or misunderstood, but cherished. Villagers passed with nods of respect. The blacksmith always left a biscuit in the fence post. The postman brought news with a scratch behind Ghost's ear. And the children? They stopped tossing pebbles. Instead, they left drawings. One day, the mayor came with a plaque. In honor of Ghost, the guardian who remembered. They placed it near the birch tree where he first appeared. But time, as it does, moved forward. Ghost grew slower. His legs stiffened. He began sleeping longer near the fire. Mira would rest her head against his fur and read him stories her father once loved. Sometimes he would wag his tail at a familiar phrase. Other times, he would stare into the distance, as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. Then one morning, Mira woke early. Too early. Something in her chest felt hollow. She walked into the living room. The fire was out, the sky outside still dark. Ghost lay in his usual spot, still, peaceful. Mira knelt beside him, placed her hand over his heart. No beat, no breath, just warmth fading, like the last ember of a fire long kept. She didn't cry, not at first. She only laid beside him, curling into the curve of his body like she used to do when she was scared of the wind. Her grandmother found her there, long after the sun rose. The whole village came to the burial. They dug beneath the birch tree. The ground, softened by spring's whisper, gave way gently. Mira placed a photo in the grave, a copy of the one with her father and Ghost, now worn from her pocket. Children placed pebbles and small drawings. The blacksmith hammered a small collar tag into a wooden post. Ghost, K9 Unit 12. Hero. Home. Mira stepped forward. She placed a loaf of bread, split in two, beside the stone. Half for what was, half for what would always be. That night, as the village lights dimmed and the stars returned to their thrones, a soft wind passed through the trees. And somewhere, faint and distant, a single bark echoed through the hills. Not mournful, not sad, but full. complete. And Mira, wrapped in her blanket, looked out the window and smiled. Because some loves don't end. They simply find a place to rest.